and then I didn't have the email to send it, but I can circulate it immediately after I finish presentation.
Okay.
Or if you have email now where I can send it, may be beneficial for us to be moved.
I think let's just proceed in the interest of time so that because we've already lost quite a considerable amount of time. So let's just proceed.
Okay. So Elisha was trying to explain to us the CFTA, how it will benefit the region, particularly the small and medium enterprises, not forgetting the most vulnerable groups of the women and youth. And just as a brief overview, the African Free Continental Free Trade Area is comprising 8 regions. And out of those 8 regions, people in the Southern and Eastern Africa are in 3 regions. So the 8 regions, we have the Maghreb Union in the Arab area. Then we have our common market for East and Southern Africa, which is COMESA, where Zimbabwe and other member states are members. Then we have the community of the Sahel-Saharan states, CENSAD, also up there in North Africa. Then we closer home, we have the East African community, which is now in East Africa, comprising 6 member states, 4 of which are also members of the COMESA, where Zimbabwe is a member. Then we have the Economic Community of Central African States, ECAS, that's in Central Africa. Also, some of the members of COMESA are members of this region. We have the Economic Community of West African States, that's in West Africa, where with the big guys like Nigerians, the Ghanaians. And we have the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, which is IGAD. Hello? Can I proceed? Can people hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, ma'am. Just continue.
You can proceed.
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Then we have the Southern African Development Community, SADC, where Zimbabwe is a member, comprising 15 members. And most of these are free trade areas. So these 8 regional economic groups form the African Free Continental Free Trade Area. So having identified those, is there any trade happening between all these regions, particularly focusing on us in Southern Africa and East Africa, where we have arrangements to eliminate non-tariff barriers to trade? I just quickly checked the trade statistics. Thanks to Fundira, he taught us how to operate the trade map. I found out that the countries in SADC, COMESA, and EAC, where people in this group from Botswana, from Namibia, from Zimbabwe, participating in this group come from, we are all trading substantially with countries up north. For instance, 29 members of the tripartite of SADC, COMESA, and EAC are already trading with West Africa. And all those also are already trading with the Central Africa, and they're also trading with the Maghreb region in the Northern Africa. Therefore, the possibility of SMEs and other private sector encountering trade obstacles and all non-tariff barriers when moving goods to these regions is very high. And are we going to move all products to Africa? As far as I know, the free trade agreement, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, when they are negotiating market access, they have categorized 3 categories of market access. They have said, okay, basing on what is already happening in the REX, like for instance, in SADC, if we've agreed to remove duties on 90% of our goods, we take that 90% to the CFTA. if COMESA has done the same, if ECOWAS has done the same. So it was agreed that whatever level of tariff reduction we have achieved in our regional economic communities, we take it up to the CFTA. Therefore, 90% of tariff lines will be duty-free. However, the CFTA has established what they call a group of sensitive products. This forms 7% of all the tariff lines that could be traded in Africa, which when computed came to about 377 tariff lines. So tariff lines are basically the products that can be traded. So 377 products, which is 7%, may not necessarily have immediate access into the CFTA, which in itself could be a non-tariff barrier as we begin. And also under the CFTA, we have agreed to develop a list of exclusion. We agreed countries can exclude some of the products from trading immediately. And these products that can be excluded, currently they are 3% of the tariff lines, which is about 161 products. So now when SMEs are accessing the CFTA market, first of all, you just want to check what are you producing. Check with your national Minister of, like for Zimbabwe, Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Trade, your minister responsible for trade, check with them what you are producing. Does it fall within the 90%? Does it fall within the 7% sensitive, or does it fall in the 3% exclusion? If it falls in the sensitive, it means that the degree of liberalizing will be less than if your product falls in the 90%. If it falls in the 3% exclusion, it means right now your product cannot be traded in the CFTA region. Therefore, coming back to Elisha's introduction, he said the CFTA presents two options: to trade, export and import, or to invest. So where you are not able to trade in what already you are producing, one can explore investment in the CFTA, because the agreement will allow you to invest, resources permitting. So coming back now to my area of presentation, non-tariff barriers in the African continental free trade area. What are non-tariff barriers? So non-tariff barriers are in the CFTA, that all the regs. Therefore, the CFTA has come up with a NTB's elimination program that includes setting up of institutions, setting up of tools, and setting up of intervention measures and other programs that will allow the SMEs and indeed rest of private sector to access the market in the continent free of obstacles, or at least with minimal number of obstacles. So the non-tariff barriers are defined by the CFTA agreement to say the non-tariff barriers refer to a wide range of restrictive regulations. Restrictive regulations are the measures that countries put in place to regulate trade with good intention, but sometimes those measures, they end up with being non-tariff barriers. For example, now we're living in COVID time. We have agreed under SADC SADC has developed guidelines how to manage, how to allow free movement of goods, not free, but safe movement of goods across the region as we observe the COVID. Those guidelines, the SADC member states agreed to implement them, but as it is on the ground, member states have gone ahead to put in place their own regulations, which are stricter, and we find that most of the traffic is either embargoed somewhere or traffic has been seriously delayed. So it's those regulations which might turn up to be NTBs, or procedures that are imposed by government authorities that make importation or exportation of products difficult or costly. The NTBs, they also comprise policies of economic protectionism against foreign trade, such as prohibitions of certain products, putting quotas on importation or exportation of products, imposing licenses or discriminatory taxes, or restrictive customs procedures, which can also form NTBs. All right, in the CFTA, how do we categorize the NTBs? So under the CFTA agreement, Annex 5 on non-tariff barriers of the agreement, has categorized non-tariff barriers into 7 parts. These 7 parts also comprise subcategories, which when one has encountered a barrier when trading across the African continent, they can use those subcategories now to report that NTB to the authorities using the available tools. So the subcategories, like subcategory 1, says the government participation in trade and restrictive practices tolerated by governments. Under this category, government can put aid, the government can restrict private sector from exporting or importing and choose to themselves to engage in trade instead of, or government can allow certain practices to happen that will restrict trade. In part 2 of the categorization, we have the customs and administrative entry procedures. These ones, most of us have experienced them. For example, customs may not, when you get to the border and your product has to be assessed and given an HS code that will determine the amount duty you must pay. Customs have sometimes given a different HS code so that your product can attract higher duty, and that will be done erroneously. So customs valuation can cause NTBs, customs classification, documentation. We have examples now in the region, there's numerous documentation, even though we have harmonized. Take for instance, us in the Eastern and Southern Africa, COMESA, EAC and SADC, we have harmonized our customs documentation, but private sector are still saying there are too many, and even now some countries are introducing other documentation, therefore causing NTBs. Then the biggest issue of the rules of origin. The rules of origin determine how much duty reduction, tariff reduction a product should get when it gets to the border. So the rules of origin, depending on how they are crafted. For example, the rules of origin for SADC, closer home, SADC, for each product you are trading, it has got its own rules of origin. For it to qualify to be produced in SADC, it must have gone the following processes. So for each product, they define the processes. Some of the processes have completely cut out trade. Rules of origin for COMESA, for example, most of them are change of tariff heading. If you have imported a raw material and processed and the tariff heading changes, then you can export duty-free. So that kind of rule of origin is flexible and allows trade. So rules of origin can be a source of NTBs. So there are many under that category, including pre-shipment inspection. Pre-shipment inspection by nature, even under the WTO, is an NTB, but member states now, they've put in place companies which are supposed to inspect the goods prior to them being exported. For example, like in our region, for goods being exported to Zimbabwe, Kenya, for example, they are supposed to be inspected by a company that is based in South Africa. So the pre-shipment inspection itself may not be an NTB, but how the inspection is done. So companies have to send their documentation to South Africa, they have to be sent to and fro. So those kind of processes and procedures and obstacles will become NTBs. Category number 3, these are the technical barriers to trade, which relate to packaging, labeling, the manner in which the requirements of those conformities are demanded. The conformities are correct, but the manner in which they are demanded may cause NTBs. Then category 4, we have now the sanitary and phytosanitary measures. These are the SPS measures that govern the importation and exportation of goods to safeguard the environment, safeguard human health, safeguard plant health, which are put in place for a good cause. However, the implementation of those may cause NTBs. Then we have a category we call the specific limitations. This one speaks to prohibitions or quantitative imports and export restrictions put by member states or tariff quotas or any other limitations a member state in the CFTA may put in place. In category 6, we have charges on imports. These include surcharges, taxes at the ports, statistical taxes, credit restrictions, border tax adjustments, and other. Then in the last category of other, CFTA is classified NTBs that are occurring from the process of transporting, clearing, and forwarding our goods as under this classification. So the process of clearing and forwarding our goods has also been a major source of NTBs, which has affected mostly the SMEs. When the SMEs get to the borders, they find there's so many touts there, there's so many clearing agents, most of whom are not accredited to anyone, most of whom are briefcase ones, and they've gotten cheated by these agents who are otherwise not traceable. So these are the classifications of the NTBs under the CFTA. And ordinarily, these are classifications that you also find in other regs like the tripartite, like the also under the ECOWAS and under other mechanisms in other regions of Africa. So these classifications, they guide us to understand where are we likely to get NTBs. They are not NTBs themselves. They are just a guidelines of where, what situation is likely to cause an NTBs. Then some examples of NTBs under the AfCFTA. Most I've given the classifications, but the specific examples of NTBs that can be experienced under the CFTA, we have the import bans I spoke about, complexity or discriminatory rules of origin, unjustified quality requirements, state subsidies, export subsidies. These and some of the NTBs that will be experienced in the region. So in the CFTA, what instruments do we have, or what is the CFTA agreement? What does it offer to support the private sector, the SMEs, to export their goods with minimal non-tariff barriers to the region? So the CFTA agreement itself is a policy framework. In the agreement, we have the protocol on goods, among other protocols. In that protocol of goods, we have Annex 5 on non-tariff barriers. The Annex 5 on non-tariff barriers, which was negotiated at the same time the agreement was being negotiated, and I was honored to have steered those negotiations. It establishes these institutional arrangements for managing NTBs. It established the procedures which will be followed when if we've encountered an NTB, we are now processing to resolve the NTBs. It also puts in place the tools that are necessary to help us to identify, to monitor, and to resolve NTBs. So in that Annex 5, you will find what are the tools you can use to report when you encounter an NTB. Which tool can you use to monitor if you have reported? How do you monitor how the process, the NTB is being resolved? And is the NTB removed? You can use those tools to monitor. So in the agreement, and specifically in Annex 5, we have now the institutional arrangements for cooperation and collaboration on matters relating to NTBs. So these institutions, so the CFTA has now established institutions at national level. it has established institutions at REC level. The REC level, I'm talking of those 8 regional economic communities I spoke about. So each regional economic community at their secretariat, they have an NTB unit or an officer sitting in there that will be responsible for coordinating NTBs. At national level, each country is nominated a ministry. In that ministry, they are supposed to have assigned a specific officer to deal with NTBs. At the continental level now, where everyone is sitting, we know now that the AfCFTA Secretariat has been established. And with Southern Africa taking up the most prestigious position of the Secretary General, the first Secretary General of the AfCFTA is coming from Southern Africa. Therefore, in the Secretariat, which is established in Ghana, the office has only been delayed by this COVID situation. Otherwise, by now, the office should have been open and running. But by virtue of there being a Secretary General already, we can say Secretariat is functional. Currently, temporarily using the support from donor agencies, they are going to be having access to some experts to assist them to be managing the NTB. So at the continental level, we have in the Secretary General's office an NTB coordination unit, which is headed by the Secretary General. So the agreements, I said it provides for the tools that are available to manage NTBs in the free trade area at continental level. Currently, we have developed the website, an online system for reporting, monitoring, and eliminating NTBs. That online system is currently now being managed at the CFTA. It will be sitting in the Secretariat, but it will be functioning through the structures I've just explained above, the national structures, the REC structures, and the continental structure. Complementing the online system, there shall be an SMS reporting mechanism. This one is particularly of interest to the SMEs. So the SMEs will have access to a short messaging system where the way it is designed is such that the short messaging system will be working at national level. Each country identifies and assigns a national number, and we established at each country level an SMS system that is operated by the various government and private sector institutions in that country. That number will be linked to other numbers of other countries, such that if an SME is for Ghana is having a problem moving their goods to, say, Zimbabwe, and these two countries have established their SMS systems, a Ghana SME can send a message to Zimbabwe SMS number, and that NTB, that problem, most of which for SMEs, they are obstacles. Those obstacles can be addressed and SMEs get assisted real time. So to explain now the institutional arrangements for managing NTBs in the continental free trade area. First of all, in each country, they must put in place what we call national monitoring committees, NTBs, national monitoring committees. These national monitoring committees will mainly be comprising all government and private sector institutions. Private sector institutions, we're talking of trade, that include trade associations like SME trade associations, industry associations, chambers of commerce, and major exporters and importers. If I can give an example for South Africa, let's say a private sector company like Shoprite. Shoprite itself is a big institution that moves volumes of variety of goods of products. So a common like ShopRite will be by design part of the national monitoring committees. Why? The functions of the national monitoring committee is for the members in that committee to identify what are the NTBs and obstacles being experienced by members, and to report those NTBs and also input into policy that will end up in having the NTBs resolved. So the national monitoring committees, each country will establish a national monitoring committee. It can have as many as 30 to 50 members by current experience in Southern and East Africa. So that committee will be sitting, say, on a quarterly basis to review, to identify, and to resolve NNTB that country may be imposing. So let's take, for example, a National Monitoring Committee of Zambia. Zambia currently is imposing some NTBs, let's say, to Kenya. So Zambia Monitoring Committee will sit and consider those NTBs they are said to have imposed and find a way forward to resolve them. The NMC can also, in their meetings, identify what are the NTBs experienced by their country and relay this information to those countries that are putting NTBs for their private sector. So NMC is the most important institution in the identification and resolution of NTBs under the CFTA agreement. Now, those NMCs are coordinated and managed by what we call the National NTB Focal Point. Each country is designated the ministry responsible for trade, but other countries, ministry responsible for foreign affairs, other countries, ministries responsible for international trade. Those ministries, they are the coordinating agency between countries. So if you want to speak to a country on NTBs, you go through their national focal point that designated. That national focal point is secretariat and coordinator of NMC work. Now, at the REC level, Regional Economic Community, in the secretariats, for example, in SADC, for example, East Africa Secretariat, we have, I said now, the units, those NTB units in the RECs, they coordinate the work of the NMC through the national focal points, through the ministry responsible for NTBs. The REC NTB units coordinate the NTB work and also through the reporting and monitoring. Are we there?
Manuel.
Hello.
Hi, yes, we are there.
Okay, I was thinking maybe after this slide, I can pause for questions or?
Okay, that will be fine.
Okay, so let me finish, then I can pause for questions.
All right.
So after at the REC level, now we have the coordinating unit at the secretariat, which is in Ghana. And the secretariat in Ghana will be coordinating all the programs through the RECs and then submit their reports to what an NTB subcommittee on NTBs. So Annex 5 establishes a subcommittee on non-tariff barriers. This subcommittee comprises all the member states. For now, we are talking of the member states that have ratified. Elisha told us the number that has signed, but we have the number that is ratified. I think it's just over 30 or thereabout. So the number that is ratified are the free trade area members. They will put in place a subcommittee on NTBs. Mainly, ministries responsible for trade and international trade. So this subcommittee is the policy-making institution that will be responsible for implementing the elimination of NTBs program. So they put the policy, they review the policies of their countries, they negotiate on removing NTBs, they negotiate on improving the NTB policy, and report to the African Ministers of Trade, which is the next level. So if there are any NTBs that cannot be resolved by the subcommittee, these are referred to African Ministers of Trade. African Ministers of Trade can resolve or give instructions to resolve. Where they fail, which is very rare, they will refer the NTB to the summit of the African Free Continental Trade Area. So can I pause for questions so far?
Okay, thank you very much. So questions, are there questions? I think Edward Swaipe, you had your hand up. Maybe if we can have your question.
Well, Elliot, yeah, I actually have a question now. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Earlier on I wanted to talk about slides, but now it's a question. The issue is when it comes to rules of origin, I have an issue with multinational companies and the so-called global value chains, where there is multiple origins for a product, meaning that a product can be packed or packaged in one country, the raw material comes from another. So when you check, you find there are multiple value added in the value of the product. And the customs officials are finding it tough. I'm talking about the product here in Botswana. Finding it tough to classify the product because you don't know whether it comes outside the free trade area, because some of the raw material is from China, another part is from India, and it came through Zambia, and then it was ultimately packaged in South Africa, and then it was classified as a South African export to Botswana. Now, to me, that is a problem when it comes to rules of origin and how the tariffs, and because to me that amounts to avoidance. It's a tricky, clever way in which multinationals, which are powerful, can actually do that. I know the subject matter now may be more about small SMMEs. I'm sorry to divert to that. It's just that it's something that I wanted to raise. Thank you.
All right,
Okay.
thank you.
Right, the rules of origin. Yes, they can be tricky, especially in application and interpretation. You will note that for a product to qualify under the rule of origin, there are processes that it must have gone through. I said for SADC, they specify the processes for each product. The processes include how much percentage of value addition is added to the production of the product. They may include what is the value of imported material. So depending on the origin criteria for that product, the product will be traded as duty-free. However, how it happens is a company that is producing and a company that is exporting a product to any country, let's say South African company is exporting to Botswana, or Zambian company is exporting to Botswana, that product they have imported a raw material from China, another one from Pakistan, and then eventually in Botswana. That company must satisfy that the percentages, the value additions, they conform to the rule of origin. How do they satisfy? They get this certificate of origin. So each agreement is a provision for certificate of origin. So the CFTA will have a CFTA certificate of origin. SADC has got a SADC certificate of origin. For the company to obtain that certificate of origin, they go to their accredited issuing authority in that country. They prove that their product is meeting the required processing under an agreement. And then that institution will now issue the certificate of origin. However, if the importing country has got doubts about that certificate of origin, there is a provision that that company can request for verification. They have to accept the goods initially under, say they collect the duty on the goods, on condition that when the verification process has been concluded and it is agreed the product is meeting rule of origin, then the company will be reimbursed. So the certificates of origin are supposed to be issued by accredited institutions. There's also provision for countries to verify the authenticity of the production processes and also those certificates of origin. Therefore, the multinational companies may not, if we do due diligence to the process, they may not get away with the exporting products that do not qualify under the rules of origin.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions at this point?
Hello?
Hello? Yes, are there any other questions at this point?
Let me just use the time because other people are still thinking.
Yeah, maybe, I think maybe if it's to do with SMEs, yes, but if not,
Yeah.
let's just
No,
proceed
this one is
until
about,
the end.
no, this one is about SMEs, but it will be very short.
Okay.
You mentioned the issue of trade associations, especially for SMEs. I really like the issue because, but now the issue I just want to raise is the differentiation in the strength of organization, the strength of social organization of the SMEs. It's quite an important issue. I don't know how that can be dealt with because it goes country to country, but it's going to go a long way because it's advocacy. It's going to go a long way in determining their participation, the extent to which their interests are included, in any decision making vis-a-vis powerful interests like ShopRite or whatever. That is just a comment. I don't know if it helps. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. All right. Maybe so. Let's just proceed until the end, and then I see Elisha is back. You also then come in again, and then we can conclude. So let's proceed.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. I have just five slides remaining. Right, so we have spoken about the policy, we have spoken about the instruments, we have spoken about the institutional arrangements for managing non-tariff barriers in the continental free trade area. Now, the tools in the continental free trade area of 55 countries. Before we have established the tools for managing NTBs. Currently, there are 3 tools. When you say tools, that is the tools, what is it? The tools, the instruments that are being used to identify and resolve NTBs. So before we established the continental free trade area tool, there were already 2 tools operational for us in the tripartite of COMESA, East African Community, and SADC, and these are 29 countries, over 50% of African continental free trade area. We already had an online system, a website through which anybody, private sector, SMEs, government, if they notice, if they are aware of an NTB or a trade obstacles that they are experiencing themselves or is being experienced by a company they know, they can report. So this website, tradebarriers.org, the tripartite has been using the website since 2010, and it has been very successful. As we speak today, it has registered just over 700 NTBs and resolved more than 90% of those. And from the success of this tool, another tool was established in West Africa, this one being managed by a private sector, a company called Borderless Alliance. This is tradebarrierswestafrica.org. This is operational in a small corridor of countries, Ghana, Ivory Coast, countries around that. But of late, most of the West African countries, they are also using it to manage the NTBs. So based on the success of these two, then the Continental Free Trade Area tool was developed. The Trade Barriers.Africa was developed. The countries agreed that this tool must be based on the successful one that was already operational in the tripartite. So when we were designing now the technical report, we basically based it on the tripartite system. So you'll find out that the systems now are all harmonized from the continental to the regional level. The tools are operating on the same template, West Africa, tripartite, and continental. The only difference now is on the classification. I gave classifications examples under the CFTA, the classifications of NTBs. Now, under the tripartite ones, the 7 categories are the same, but the examples under the tripartite are more expanded so that the SMEs, when they are at the border and the issue is the customs officer has gone for tea, they can go in the system and find that classification which says customs officer not is on his post. So the tripartite one is expanded explanations. The CFTA has got sort of summarized explanation. So these tools are operating in the continent, but for our purposes today, we're talking about the tool which we are using at the continental level. I said the website is www.tradebarriers.africa. If you can Google it now, I sent in advance a flyer, which I saw Elisha already posted on our WhatsApp tool. The aim of sending it in advance was for people to try and browse and see, familiarize, so that by the time now we're discussing about it, at least people have got some idea. But if you haven't, it doesn't matter. After this, you immediately can browse. So in the website, that website is a real-time tool, which must allow, if somebody in Botswana, they've sent their shipment to Ghana. There's a time when a South African company sent a shipment to Ghana. When they got to the port in Ghana, they experienced the problems at the port, and they reported. Then we only had the tripartite one because the tripartite system could not take issues outside the tripartite region. That company could not be assisted. But now with the continental system, if such kind of an obstacle or a non-tariff barrier occurred between a country under the tripartite and a country outside the tripartite, then they will use the Trade Barriers.Africa to report their problem. So the Trade Barriers Africa allows countries, when they experience NTBs, they go to the website and log in there, open an account. The flyer I sent will give you the steps what to do. Open an account and submit your NTB. If you are not able to do that, the focal point, the people in the Ministry of Trade, the focal point can assist you to report the NTB on their behalf. Or in this website itself, if you, on the extreme right, in the middle, there's somewhere it says contacts. Under that field of contacts, you find for each country, each country has been assigned, will be assigned an email address where you can communicate with government. Otherwise, the focal point can submit a report on behalf of people who are not able to use the website. So the website has got facility to allow people to submit complaints. When the complaint is submitted, it goes to the back of the system. At the back of the system, it is received by the coordination unit in the Secretary General's office in Ghana. So Secretary General will have already assigned an officer to manage the online system. So the complaint will go to that officer who is assigned. As soon as that officer receives the complaint, desirably they should have the app on their phone. So when they have the app on their phone, they receive the complaints 24 hours, 365 days, and they are supposed to respond to them within reasonable time. Like under the tripartite, we respond to the complaints almost instantly because our system operates 24 hours, 365 days. So the coordination unit will now assess the complaint, matching it against those categories explained. So if somebody is complaining that customs are delaying my processing my documentation, somebody writes like that. So the coordination person will go to the categorization, see where that description matches. Does that description of a problem match any of the categories in the system? If it matches, therefore, it is a non-tariff barrier. If it does not match, let's say somebody has complained, there was a time, sorry, Botswana, now that you are online, I think I can use you as an example. Sometime in 2009, when we were starting the tripartite system, somebody in Botswana posted to say the government officials are gallivanting using public money. Therefore, so see, so that kind of a complaint posted online, it's not an NTB. It is another issue which has nothing to do with movement of goods. So now the coordinating
unit. It's a governance issue.
The governance issue, which we are not, the system is not supposed to be addressing. So the reason why when complaints come in, they first go at the back of the system where only the coordinating unit can see. So the coordinating unit will see, determine the authenticity, assign the relevance. If it is relevant, matching the descriptions, then they put it in the public arena. In the public, now they have summarized and put in the correct language. When they put in a correct language, first of all, they consult the focal points. They consult the person who is reported to say, okay, we've received your complaint. We are suggesting we recast it to read as follows. If the complainant agrees to the recast text, then only it is posted to the public window. So the online system for the CFTA, like for us in Southern and East Africa, anything that we cannot process under our system is tradebarriers.org. Anything that involves our region and other regions, we now post in the continental ones. If by mistake, let's say Botswana is complaining about Zimbabwe, they send to the continental system. The continental system will refer that issue back to the tripartite level because that is where the issue must be attended. What determines whether NTB is in the tripartite system or in the continental system? That is determined on the instrument that is complained about. My brother from Botswana spoke about rule of origin. So let us say South Africa is complaining about rules of origin under SADC. So they'll say, Zambia has denied my products to enter Zambia because they allege it does not meet the rule of origin. And they post that complaint in the continental one. The continental will see that, no, okay, this is a rule of origin for SADC, not a rule of origin for the continent. So the certificate of origin concerned here is a certificate of origin that is managed in the tripartite system. So they'll bring it back. In another way, if Botswana complained about a certificate of origin being disqualified by Ghana, and they put in the tripartite administrator will also see that, no, this instrument is a CFTA instrument. Therefore, they escalate the NTB to the CFTA system. So the CFTA system is the umbrella overall system for Africa, which is managing all issues that do not strictly belong to subsystems. Subsystems are all systems by the regs. So the systems in the regs will manage NTBs that speak to their specific instruments. The African system will speak to the instrument at Africa level. So with instruments like certificates of origin, we're going to have like transport instruments, we're going to have customs instruments. So I can imagine at the CFTA level, we're going to have an certificate of origin. That is a continental instrument which can only be managed at continental level. Like now back home in COMESA, we have a COMESA certificate of origin. If a complaint was on COMESA certificate of origin, it will come to the tripartite system because that is one that is managing the countries under the tripartite. So this system for you, if you go to the flyer I sent, you Google and try, you find you have questions, you can either, I'll have my emails distributed to members. You can either email me or through the system itself, you can send inquiries. So the system, I said, it allows you to report. When you report, the report is confidential until it is assessed and it is posted to the public. Once it is reported, now it is assigned, I said there are institutions, national focal points. So those national focal points, they are the key people who are processing all the issues that are posted into the online system. So when the coordination unit pulls the NTB into the public, they assign the people to address it. So if it is a problem between Ghana and Botswana, the coordinator will assign the focal Minister of Trade in Botswana and Minister of Trade in Ghana to look into the issue, and also assign SADC Secretariat and assign ECOWAS Secretariat to assist their members. So in 1 second, in one push of a button, the complaint is sent to 2 governments who may appoint a number of focal points. In each government, it is desirable there is a private sector focal point, there is a public sector focal point. The private people, because they will be the ones who are advocating for the removal of NTBs. If they do not have a seat as a focal point, they are not able to go into the system and see what is happening. Focal points, they see and process documents in the system. They share documents, they share conversations, they share confidential information at the back of the system. So if private sector is not a member, they're not able to influence the government to follow up and to resolve NTBs. So it is encouraged that when member says now, the CFTA system is now up and running, and they are still in the process of appointing the institutions. So far, countries have appointed their focal points, but in East and Southern Africa, there are a few countries that are yet to appoint. Botswana have appointed, so you're safe. There are a few countries that are yet to appoint, but members have, the Annex 5 does not have provision for private sector focal points. So it will be important for member states to motivate the Secretary General to ask the NTB subcommittee to provide for private sector focal points as important institutions on the management and elimination of NTBs. I'm recommending this because of our experience in the tripartite. In the tripartite, we have private sector focal points as designated and official institutions managing the NTBs tools. So private sector, the SMEs are able to post. The only challenge right now is that for the SMEs, like with experience in tripartite, they are not able to use these IT tools like online system. So to go around that challenge, the SME associations, the heads of associations, the chairman or whoever, secretary, they compile the NTBs that are affecting their members and facilitate that these are posted in the online system. So experience like we have in the tripartite, not individual companies post, but the representatives like Transporters Association, Road Transport Association of Zimbabwe as an example, Federation of East and Southern Africa Road Transport Association, FESATA as an example. There is also in Zambia. So in East Africa, And the private sector focal points, like for example in East Africa, the private sector focal points, who are the chambers of commerce, they compile a list of problems by their members and post them in the online system and follow up on their behalf. So the CFTA online system is going to facilitate that as we trade. I said the trade statistics show that we're already actively trading. Even those members who are not members of the FTA, trade does not necessarily have to go through the FTA. The trade is going on whether FTA or no FTA. So whether you are an FTA, your country is an FTA member or not, you can still use the online system. Of course, you will not benefit from the tariff reductions, but you can benefit from hurdles being removed as you move your products. If there were transport associations in this group, I wanted to ask, now what is the logistic of us, like for instance in Southern Africa, moving goods to Northern Africa? This will also determine the nature of NTBs our countries are likely to experience when moving goods into those regions. Road transportation normally is the one that is generating lots of NTBs, transit issues like roadblocks, issues like way bridges, issues like spot checks. So there can be too many and delay movement of goods and also cause the extra cost. So depending on the transportation logistics, but also even if goods are going by air, there could be experiences at the airports, experiences of moving goods from the airport to the to the final destinations. Those can be cause NTBs that can be reported in the system. So to conclude, I would like to say, appreciate that the CFTA system was made possible through funding from the German government, GIZ, and expert advice from UNCTAD, United Nations Conference for Trade and Development, and the African Union itself. And also to extend my appreciation for being part of that team that developed the system. Specifically, I wrote the technical report that established the mechanism. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Wonesai. I'm sure we've all been educated, especially in terms of what to do at these borders when we experience challenges. So Elisha is back and he's going to continue. Unfortunately now, because of the time aspect, what we are going to do, I think, is just to ask Elisha to probably discuss in more broad terms what the AfCFTA actually means for us as SMEs. But maybe before Elisha steps in, I think there was a question from Rawlings there. Rawlings, maybe you can just go ahead.
Sorry, Mr. Mtambanengwe. Let me just go through, then we just have questions at the end.
Is it?
That's my proposal. Yes, because I can see people are now leaving. I think because of time.
All right, okay.
Thank you. So, firstly, my apologies for the network challenge that I had from this end. But before that, we just discussed the types of the trade agreements available. Now, let's go to our actual trade agreement that we want to discuss today. That is the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. During the 18th ordinary session of the Assembly of Heads of State and Government in Ethiopia in January 22, a decision was made to establish this grand free trade area. Then in 2015, Joburg was then a decision to launch the negotiations. And in 2018, March, between 17 and 21 March, there was again an extraordinary session for summit or heads of state in Kigali, where the three documents were presented for signing. AfCFTA consolidated text, the Kigali Declaration, and the protocol to the treaty establishing the movement, the free movement of business people. Then during that signing summit, 44 member states of the AU out of the 55 signed the consolidated text of the AfCFTA, and then 47 signed the Kigali Declaration, and then 30 signed the Protocol on Free Movement. As of 22 July 2019, 54 out of 55 member states of the AU have signed the consolidated text of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, leaving only one country, Eritrea. Then the agreement was entered into force on 30th of May 2019 for the 24 countries that had actually deposited instruments of ratification. And this was after the 30 days, after the 22 countries had actually deposited the ratification. The agreement required 22 ratifications for it to come into force. But then after the 22 countries coming to ratify it, then it would come into force 30 days later. To date, as Vanessa is actually alluded to, 29 countries have actually ratified the agreement. And the operational phase of the agreement was launched in Niamey, in Niger, on 7 July 2019. That's the list of the countries that have actually deposited their instruments of ratification to AUC. The other remaining between the 54 who have actually signed the consolidated text and the ratification are actually busy going through their domestic processes for them to submit or deposit the instruments of ratification to AUC. As I mentioned earlier on, trading under this grant agreement is supposed to start on 1 July 2020. The Secretariat is based in Ghana, and His Excellency Wamkele Mene was officially appointed the First Secretary General on 19 March 2020. Those will be the operational instruments. The Africa Continental Free Trade Area will be governed by 5 operational instruments to make it work: the rules of origin, the online negotiating forum, the monitoring and elimination of non-tariff barriers, digital payment system, and Africa Trade Observatory instrument. The main objectives of this grant free trade area is to create a single continental market for goods and services. People should be in a position to trade freely from Cape to Cairo. And business people should also be in a position to move with their investments across the continent, thereby accelerating the establishment of the customs union. The other main objective is to expand intra-African trade through better harmonization and coordination of trade and liberalization, facilitation and instruments of across REX and Africa in general. What's the outlook? Africa will bring together 55 member states of AU, covering a market of more than 1.2 billion, including a growing middle class, and a combined GDP for more than 3.4 trillion. But the question remains, how are SMEs going to benefit from this grant free trade area? I've gone through the ZimTrade website and found out that they've actually done some surveys in about 9 or 6 countries. I'll take, for example, Botswana. What are the opportunities for SMEs in Zimbabwe when they say want to export to Botswana or invest in Botswana? I've just used the example of Zimbabwe for this discussion, but what you are saying here can actually apply and can actually be used in any country. So the first thing is to gather your market intelligence, do your market survey, identify a need, and try to satisfy that need. Don't try to manufacture goods and then thereafter try to look for markets. Otherwise, you will be disappointed. The first thing is identify your market, identify the need in that market, and then try to say, whom am I manufacturing these goods for? So for Botswana, for example, if you are in Zimbabwe, There are opportunities to export potatoes, bananas, oranges, paper. Normally, distribution in Botswana is normally done through main retailers, wholesalers such as Mr. Veg. There's also an opportunity in Botswana for fast-moving items like our Mazoe brand, quality biscuits, our Tanganda tea leaves, cosmetics such as hair food, nail polish, roll-on, sanitary pads, toothpick, and earpieces. And if you want to invest in Botswana, you can actually target the agricultural sector, which is in need of agricultural inputs and implements. Of course, yes, this sector is being serviced by South Africa. But you can actually go a step further and actually customize the implements for the Botswana environment. There's also an opportunity in Botswana for building materials. You can actually be exporting timber to Botswana. Another sector that can actually target for Botswana market is mining supplies, supplying services like mining equipment repairs and servicing. Due to local empowerment requirement in Botswana, the trick might be to partner with locals. But I know I've got a number of friends from Botswana who are actually attending this and are wondering what they can also export to Zimbabwe. In Zimbabwe, we don't produce salt. We've been importing salt from Botswana under our bilateral trade agreement, where if somebody's resident in Botswana and they are looking for opportunities in Zimbabwe, please export salt to Zimbabwe. It can enter our country duty-free. Another country that has been surveyed by Zimtrade is Angola. What are the opportunities in Angola? Products with potential in Angola include meat, fresh beef, fresh pork, fresh chicken, processed meat products, dairy products, farm implements, designer clothes, and the protective clothing and the building materials. And there's also an opportunity in providing services in Angola. Angola is looking for English training institutions and translation services for government, diplomatic services, business, and tourism activities. So if you are in academic arena and if you're looking for opportunities where you can expand where you can actually export your services, Angola is there. It's actually looking for English training institutions that can actually train people in Angola, English, and even provide translation services to government, diplomatic services, the business community, and the tourism. Another country is Zambia, our neighbors. If you want to invest in Zambia, you might as well focus in agriculture by supplying inputs, implements, and technological solutions, smart agriculture solutions. For fast-moving consumer goods, you can actually export processed foods, beverages, fresh produce, personal care, and home care products. You can also even target mining supplies, where Zambia is also looking for capital equipment, mechanical components, process inputs, consumables, and ancillary services. For Mozambique, for products, if you are a Zimbabwean exporter to Mozambique, you can actually look at trying your lucky with refined sugar, agricultural seed, chemicals, agricultural implements and tools, veterinary supplies, protective clothing, poultry, construction materials such as wooden doors. And for trading services, they are also looking for training and technical expertise. There's also opportunities in warehousing and logistics. Then in Namibia, opportunities are there even for SMEs. Construction material, you can actually export building material such as roofing tiles, roofing structures, doors, window frames, fencing materials, treated wooden poles, technical and sun protecting or contracting services. We can even export pharmaceuticals, human skills. Namibia is actually in need of scientists, such as engineers, medicine, and those who did vet services, who provide vet services. However, there's also competition coming from South Africa when you are planning to venture into Namibia. So you have to identify your niche and strategically position yourself. Another country that you may actually try to venture into, exporting your services or investment is South Sudan. Again, we're talking of pharmaceuticals, we're talking of refined sugar, agricultural seed, chemicals, implements and tools, vet supplies, educational supplies such as exercise books, stationery, pens, etc. Then protective clothing and headgear, yes, caps and umbrellas. We have got markets in South Sudan. So these are just examples that I've just picked from the Zimtrade website. Our tips are, as SMEs, let's try to use Zimtrade website and other services. Let's approach Zimtrade if you've got your line of business and maybe you want to know which country you can actually export your services. Make good use of the Zimtrade website and the other consulting services. As I alluded to earlier on, you need to identify a need in a particular market. It is not recommended to manufacture source goods and then start cracking your heads to find out where you can actually export your goods, because you may actually have manufactured or sourced goods which actually do not have a market. So the first thing is to start looking for a market and produce for given markets. It's critical to have a business proposal in place, a thorough business proposal, which even tells you the cost of manufacturing those goods, the cost of taking those goods to your particular market, the expected selling price in your given market. You also need to conduct due diligence and partner locals. There are actually a number of opportunities in DRC, but the DRC, as an example, is a tricky market. When you want to partner locals in DRC, make sure that you've actually conducted due diligence. Actually, for the DRC market, it's actually advisable to have an establishment in DRC as opposed to wholly operating from home in Zimbabwe. Another opportunity that we have is to collaborate with the Zimbabweans in the diaspora. As SMEs, it may actually be a challenge to create this market surveys, to do market intelligence, but we've got Zimbabweans who are all over. For example, Kenya is a host to a significant number of Zimbabweans in diaspora. You can actually service that market by targeting the Zimbabweans by their numbers who are actually in Kenya and providing them what they are missing from home. You can actually take your Madora, you can actually send your Mazoe, you can actually send any other things. You can actually ask them, the people in diaspora, in Kenya, for example, what they're actually missing, and then you establish shops where you sell Zimbabwean products and Zimbabwean produce. You can actually even try to work together with people in diaspora. At the moment, we've got a number of people who are actually in diaspora because of this COVID. They know that globally there'll be a shortage of food. And they're looking for partners, those people who have actually learned to grow crops, and they're actually busy looking for markets, not only in Africa, but in countries like Italy and even Spain, the EU and the UK. So let's form joint ventures, partnerships with our colleagues who are in diaspora. I've got a piece of land, but I don't have the resources. We have got people in diaspora. We have got access to capital, and we have got the agricultural experts. We have actually graduated from school, or some who already have experience. Let's join hands and work together and the partner. The one thing that normally kills that hinders us as SMEs to grow, we want to do everything alone. We want a winner-take-all approach. But when we work as a team, together, each achieves more. So that's another way we can actually try to penetrate export markets by working together, by forming up teams and crowdfund, manufacture goods and export. We can also attend trade fairs when we understand that even in our neighboring countries, be it Namibia, Botswana, or Mozambique, or Zambia, they are all in trade fairs. Let's visit a day or two and see exactly what is required. We can also, as I alluded to earlier on, mobilize resources and invest as organized groups. Trade is actually a war. And to win in a war, you need actually proper strategies. It's not as strong in the pack. So there's a need to empower our demos like the seniors, which is actually hosting this dialogue. We become members of seniors. We pay our subscriptions, and we then request the demo like seniors to engage some consultants to create some market survey and gather market intelligence. Then we share. That way, it actually lessens the cost. There's also an advantage when people actually work in organized groups. Apart from the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, Zimbabwe has got an operational interim economic partnership agreement with the EU and has already signed another one with the UK in preparation for the Brexit. There are actually a number of people actually exporting horticultural produce to those countries, but it's not easy. It's not actually a strong back, as I mentioned earlier on. You will need certificates such as the global GAP certificates and other certificates. And from my work that I've been doing last month, you may actually need around $18,000 to get those certificates, because it entails bringing in inspectors from the UK, from EU, to come here to Zimbabwe, host them in hotels, which meets their standards, and inspect the process of how we do our things. But as an SME, it might actually be difficult for me to raise such a huge amount. The only way that we can do is to work in groups, mobilize those resources, and even engage the government and see how best they can actually assist us to make sure that we meet the standards required in the foreign market. I'm very sure that we can do it as SMEs, especially when we work as teams and as organized groups. We actually have a project that we're actually doing, which is convincing me that when SMEs work unitedly, even as organized team, they can achieve something. We have actually registered a training center, a training institution called Africa Center for Customs, Excise and Trade Studies, based in Harare. But we don't have the money. We have the knowledge, and we have the skills. The trick has been to working together as a team. We have got trade experts, we have got customs experts, we have tax experts, we have excise experts. We have come in together to come up with the cost content. And now with COVID, our original plan was to run these courses in Harare. We were supposed to have launched these assets on the 26th of March, 2020. Then because of COVID, we could not do it. But it has actually given us another opportunity to say, let us offer this course online. But how are we going to do it when we don't have money? We have actually roped in an ICT expert. For some of you may actually be aware of Mr. Mabundu. It was actually, okay, guys, I'm going to train you. You have your course content ready. As an ICT expert, I'm bringing in my online training. So we're so much excited as a team that come 2021, instead of only offering these courses in Zimbabwe, we'll be in a position to offer our courses in customs, in trade, and in tax, continentally, and even beyond. But we are only achieving this because we are working as a team. If as SMEs, we avoid the selfishness, the greediness, to want to do everything alone, it will take us long to penetrate some of these markets. But when we work together as a team, and we share the resources, we share the knowledge, we can actually achieve more. This can be done. In last year, I facilitated the exports of 8 trucks from ordinary ladies and gentlemen in Zimbabwe. This was another group, the Cross Border Association. They organized themselves, sought one group CD, one permit, and exported their merchandise to DRC. These are not even sophisticated people who are actually this dialogue. But if those people, our old ladies and old gentlemen, could come up together as cross-border traders, gather their merchandise to fill 80 trucks, and manage to have proper documentation to take those goods to DRC and come back, we are very much convinced that as SMEs, if we work together as a team and organize ourselves, we can benefit more under the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. Thank you.
All right, thanks very much, Elisha. And the details, I think his details have been there. So I'm sure those that will need to get in touch with him will be able to do so. And we are also going to share the slide within the group. So at this point, we'll just open up for questions once again.
Hi, Mr. My name is Rollins here.
Hi, Rollins.
Yes, glad to meet you again. I don't know if you remember me. I'm from one of the financial institutions in Zimbabwe. So I'm quite excited and happy to be here. And I think it's by no coincidence that I'm actually here, because I'm a strong advocate for Africa intercontinental trade. I do have a couple of questions or comments around this August meeting here. I hope not to water down on the efforts that have been done so far, obviously, but maybe just to probably offer some comments. I feel that there is need for us to more or less consolidate all of the investment opportunities that have been identified across Africa in more or less like one portal, which more or less categorizes per country, if possible, opportunities that have been identified in the marketplace of sorts. I think, taking for example in Zimbabwe, if you classified, it's really, it makes life easier in terms of what the previous speaker was alluding to, in terms of, first of all, identifying investment opportunities in a particular country before you even start manufacturing. I think it actually makes life easier. Then once that is done, it also then encompasses people to contact in those particular countries. And how I suggest we can actually go about this in a smarter and more robust manner is that I hear the previous speaker, I think it's Mr. Elisha Chuma, was alluding to the fact that there are challenges in Africa, which are very real, from where I actually sit in the financial services sector, in terms of raising capital for SMEs. Obviously, because we have been following more or less like previously laid down rules and procedures for funding in terms of SMEs. So you find that those rules that have been set before by people who hold capital are obviously not favorable for SMEs which are coming up. But, you know, unfortunately, remember, most of these multinational organizations were once SMEs at some point in time. Even if you are to look at JP Morgan Chase, even if you are to look at Standard Oil, which is now then your Rockefellers, those were all SMEs at some point in time. But because the laws of the land and probably people who were, you know, in politics at that time, whatever the case might be, recognized opportunities which were there, which they then allowed these guys to exploit, to then come up with your current Americas and etc. So what we now need to do as individuals living within Africa, where we have a challenge with raising capital, we need to think outside the box. I like what Mr. Chuma mentioned around crowdfunding and hunting impact. It's very, very important. So how the marketplace will then fit into raising capital now is we need to start registering our SMEs through this marketplace by ensuring that there are monthly subscriptions which are contributed towards this marketplace, which then aid towards sustaining, obviously, the goings on in terms of the website, the apps, etc., and also creating a pool of funds which allows members to apply for. By virtue of them being registered, they can have access to these types of funding. Cognizant of the fact that we may not be needing to ask for capital, but by virtue that we have a registered pool of members who are coming together with one common cause. And we also know the phase of operation. Where possible, they then come together to form single entities, which allow them to exploit bigger markets in the long run. And then also, what I would also want to urge members here is that there is a conscious need for us within the different African countries in our setups to really interrogate opportunities around where countries are importing certain goods, be it internationally or even across markets. These are where we may find low picking. For example, in Zimbabwe, you find that probably, I don't know if my statistics are correct, but 40% of tomatoes that are grown are actually go to waste. But and yet Zimbabwe was importing, I don't have the actual figure, but millions in terms of purees and also in terms of tomato sauces, etc., etc. This creates an opportunity for Zimbabwe, for example. But these opportunities are across all African countries. And if the marketplace is to be established, this will really, really allow us as Africans to set the pace and determine the course of our future. And, avoid, the usual song for, crying for aid and also crying for foreign funding, be it from the IMF or from the World Bank. There is enough money within Africa, but the problem is we're probably not just putting it into good use. So once we are able to establish this marketplace, I am sure it will be a step in the right direction. I thank you.
Thanks for that contribution, Rawlings. I think it's very pertinent. Do we have other questions?
Hello?
Something.
Hello?
Hello, yes, Anna.
Go ahead.
Yes. Thanks to Mr. Chuma for the presentation. And I realized that from his presentation, he's got lots of information on markets opportunities in markets. But my question, Mr. Chuma, is all this information, where do SMEs get it? Where can they find this kind of information? Because I think this is one major area where SMEs are facing challenges in knowing what is required where. While they can produce, they don't know where their products are required. I know you've said, please, first of all, before you produce or you manufacture anything, make sure you identify a market. But it's not easy for SMEs. It might be easy for large companies, but for SMEs is a challenge. So how do SMEs get to a point where they can have, free information? Maybe not free as such, but at least information to know where to send their products to. And then the logistics becomes another challenge as to how to get the products to those markets.
Oh, thank you, Madam Tombodzi. Before I come to you, I would like to say thank you to Rawlings. You say Zimbabweans are very rich, but we don't realize that how much is worth our land even in our rural areas, even if you don't have your A1 or A2. And how are we using that land to take baby steps to end up exporting? You can actually identify even local exporters and become an outgrower as a starting point. And as you make some savings, you then also go into marketing. If you go to Wange around October, you will see people throwing mangoes away, throwing out mango. Instead of processing that mango into mango juice, you go, I was again in Kwekwe. I was also in Kwekwe, where I saw again the same thing, because every household in Wange has got some mango trees. And the same applies even in Mbizo and Kwekwe. And instead of mobilizing this, collecting all this mango fruits and then process them into mango juice, and if you're in Wange, export to Zambia or Namibia, we take all that fruit into a rubbish pit. The same is actually happening to what Rollins was saying about tomatoes. So I'm just adding on to what Rollins was saying we have to be innovative and think of how best we can actually utilize, because this is wealth that we are actually throwing away. Then coming to Madam Tombo's, the information that I've saved you, that I've shared with you, is readily available freely on Zimtrade portal. Of course, yes, because they've also pressed, their hands are full. They haven't actually managed to create this service in all the 55 countries. We can then come in and supplement. This is the reason why I was saying, let's make good use of our BMOs, just like the seniors, the Farm Jumping Association. If we mobilize the resources there, they can actually engage some of the consultants and then do this globally and then put it on, say, SMEs portal. Any member of the seniors have actually access to that information without any additional cost, but the cost will be that his or her subscription. Actually, Mr. Mtambanen can actually start by asking their members, what are they currently producing? And then try to find the markets, either engage Zimtrade to identify countries that can actually buy the product that are being currently produced, or engage some other consultants at low cost, and then share this information with all their members, whether they wanted to every Zimbabwean to benefit from that or to their paid up members, that will be up to them. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Other questions? No other questions?
Good
I have a question.
Yes.
But because I had asked earlier, I was trying to give others a chance.
Sure, I think you can go ahead.
Okay. Mr. Chuma, you talked about, I really liked your practical examples about doing for trade in DRC and other places. I liked the way you had put it, because it was practical. I mean, people could see what could be done and what are the opportunities and possibilities between Botswana and Zimbabwe, South Africa, throughout our region. But now there's just one little thing that I want to raise. Because there's always a linkage between the SMMEs forward linkage and the other bigger businesses, whether forward or not, but in terms of size, at least, the fact that at the retail level, there will be a supermarket, which will be the market for the produce for an agricultural product, for instance, or any other industry you want to give it. Now, there is something, especially in retailing, in food, which is called buying group. So a buying group in multinationals and brand groups, they go in those different names. Plus the centralized, now the big multinationals are doing their centralized storages forgot the name they use. Now, what is happening is that there is a person who is actually doing the buying inside the supermarket, whether it's ShopRite, Pick and Pay, or whatever. So there is a person who's doing the buying at headquarters, and the SMME has to get in touch with that person. And that is the networking which SMMEs have to break into. And usually, I'm not trying to say it's impossible, but usually there's a challenge that the SMMEs have to bypass established trade agreements, established contracts between buying groups and retail shops. And what we used to call wholesaling, which is disappearing in the retail trade. So this is the challenge. I don't know how, I hope you get my point, how that is going to happen, if you can unravel and unpack that problem. Yeah.
Right. I don't have a straightforward answer. And as I said earlier on, the trade is war, and we need to strategize. I remember sometime sharing notes with a colleague from Kenya. I haven't actually been to Nairobi besides the international airport, but I'm told even the shops from South Africa, they are also stocking goods manufactured or grown in Kenya. So the issue was actually a consumer resistant to say, no, we appreciate you, but then you cannot bring tomatoes from South Africa. You cannot bring cabbage from South Africa. Then the first excuse was it's below standard. Then I said, okay, train us to up our standards. How exactly can we do it? So I'm told the bulk of the agricultural produce is actually grown in Kenya, which is actually stocked even in those multinational companies. So those are some of those things that we may actually need even to educate even our consumers to prefer our local grown, so that even those multinationals which actually operate in our countries may indirectly be forced to go small. But I admit it's a challenge penetrating these multinationals as MSCs. But let's continue dialoguing. Let's continue sharing notes.
Yeah, thank you for that. Actually, it's very valid, the example you've given. It's about ShopRite in both Uganda and Kenya. I saw a study like that. That is very true. But that is a protectionist intervention that was done by Uganda and Kenya. But I don't know if it can be duplicated in more liberalized economies. Yeah, anyway, thank you for the answer. That's a very valid intervention.
Yeah, if I can come in, I think for me, this is where my concern is, because if you look at our region, generally, South Africa is very dominant. And if you look at what AfCFTA brings in, it further opens up the borders. So yes, we want to look at the opportunities, but I think there's also a huge threat for us in terms of our business, even from a domestic point of view. That's going to come through where you find competitors. So far, maybe South Africa is not very dominant in Zimbabwe, but if you go into the region, it's very dominant. And you are also finding countries like Kenya are also becoming very aggressive in terms of expanding beyond their own borders. And this is my fear that as Zimbabwean businesses, we may either, number one, fail to exploit the opportunity outside, which is what has been highlighted, but more importantly, we may actually lose markets internally because we are so used to this closed market. I don't know, Mr. Chuma, if you can comment.
Thank you very much. Yes, we blame South Africa, but we should actually be blaming ourselves. Those guys, they are very aggressive. I was doing some survey at Chirondo, was it in 2019? Already South Africa have got a shop right at Chirondo border post. On Zimbabwe side, there's nothing. But the regional settlement on Zimbabwe side is actually growing. Zambia is actually a high demand of our fruits, oranges, and some vegetables. But there is nobody supplying those things at Chirundu border post, despite the growing population. And South Africa really says, okay, this is the border, Chirundu, which is borders Zambia and Zimbabwe. And these people are busy asleep. What can we do? Let's take advantage. Let us put ShopRite. Then can you really blame ShopRite for that? Can you really blame South Africa for that? You go again even to Sango border post. Our cross-border traders are actually sleeping in the open. There is need for lodges. There is need for shelter. And if one guy from South Africa would actually come, either on Zimbabwe side or on Zambian side, and set up some lodges, would actually blame them? Of course, yes, South Africa is actually an economic powerhouse, but we have to choose our battles very well. What really can we actually produce? We have actually so many brands in Zimbabwe. I mean, first of all, I don't entertain this talk of we are going to be swallowed and so forth. We are actually failing to meet demand of some of our products in the region. Our mazo, wherever you go, even in South Africa, our mazo is in demand. Our Cerelac is in demand. Our Tanganda teas are in demand. Go to South Africa, go to Botswana, go to Zambia. So we got our own area where we are saying, okay, what we can do, let us do it to the best of our abilities. And conquer the region in that particular area, where at least we are perfect in those other areas. But something that we are facing is that even where we actually have an advantage, we are not taking advantage of those areas. For example, this other few areas that I've actually mentioned. We have actually an advantage in Zimbabwe. We have got so many vocational centers where our government is actually training people in hands-on jobs, carpentry, electrical, mechanic, building, and so forth. Botswana is a building. Namibia construction is actually happening at high scale. The same is actually happening in Angola. Why are we not exporting those services to those other areas? Instead of trying to compete where we know we don't have an advantage against if they beat us in this area, but with our other areas that we can also take advantage of. The areas. Let's identify our areas where we can do best in the region and focus on those.
Hello.
Hello, yes,
Hello.
Vanessa.
Yes, I was listening to everyone, and would like to make an observation that Zimbabwe, especially you guys there, we should try and get rid of this protectionist mentality. Everywhere we go, our business people are requesting government to be protected against competition, which they themselves are not able to compete. Therefore, we are pricing our goods very high by putting in competition. What stops us from joining the value chains? Right, ShopRite established itself. We can supply tomatoes into ShopRite and still gain foreign currency. We can ask another producer to come and produce in Zimbabwe if it is possible, but let's try, now Mr. Chuma, I give this assignment to you. Can we promote a dialogue that identifies potential industry in the SME? The industry whole world now is in the SME. They have been discovered, but they are not able to produce because the big companies are seeking protection, and that protection is frustrating the SME to rise up and produce for export. So the companies like Zimtrade, they are more on the promotion. Can they go down to the industry, identify the SME, identify the support for potential SMEs to supply anything in the value chain, not the whole value chain? So this advocacy, Mr. Chumale, can you please advocate for identifying the lying industry in Zimbabwe and make it rise and produce to supply the value chains? The other earlier question which says, can we have a register of potential investments, or also try to raise funding at the continental level? We can start, as Mr. Chuma says, we have our national register, but that will need someone to go. National register, let's say coordinated by Trade. At the CFTA level, there's African Trade Observatory. That is an information portal that can house and use and assist the Zimbabweans and any other companies in the region to express their potential, the capacity to export for the African continent. But before we go to the African continent, we produce for ourselves and for the region. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The other questions? Okay, if not, I think I would like to thank Mr. Chuma as well as Onesai for the informative discussion, as well as obviously, I think Edward also contributed quite a lot. Our apologies once again for the mishap at the beginning, but I think this has been a very informative session. And I still think the topic is not a one-day issue. It's an issue that's going to, I'm actually scared, if I can put it that way, that this whole AfCFTA thing is going to haunt us, especially if you look at the developments, because the reason why you've not had the South African companies coming into Zimbabwe has been because of our exchange rate regime. So this is why they set up at the borders, like Elisha mentioned. But if the whole exchange rate scenario is fixed, what you will find is that there's going to be competition actually coming in. Like Mrs. Ove has alluded to, the protection will fall away because of these agreements that we are entering. And I think we need to be prepared, not only to go out and take advantage of opportunities, but also to defend our own territory internally. And I'm not talking about protection, but actually having products and services that meet the quality requirements that are going to be there within the continent. And as Elisha highlighted at the beginning, we are now looking at a market of 1.2 billion people as opposed to the 14 million that we've been concentrated on. So there are both opportunities and threats that we will need to take into account. And we are going to leave that WhatsApp group open for further discussions. I think if there are issues, please get in touch with us. Mr. Chuma also and his organization, I think they're also very key to understanding this whole trade environment and what is going to come. So I would like to thank everyone for participation. Mr. Chuma, final comments?
Sorry.
Yes, Vanessa.
Now for networking, how are we likely, do we have a register for participants to this meeting?
We've actually recorded this session. So we've actually got everything on the session, but also we've got the people that people were joining the WhatsApp group. So we've got that as well for continued interaction. Okay, Mr. Chuma, any final comments?
The Africa Continental Free Trade Area is like a game or a competition called AFCON, where a number of teams gather together to compete. And at the end of the day, one team will declare the champion. Africa Continental Free Trade Area is like a family cake, where nations are going to sit down and say, can we share this thing equally? Trade is a war. And for us to win a war, we need to have a strategy. For us to win a competition like AFCON, we really practice and we really need to put our issues in place. And we need to have a proper game plan. Each game that we play should actually be having a proper game plan. So it's not going to be easy, it's not going to be rosy, but it's doable. We can do it. What we...
Sorry, apologies. Seems like someone got unmuted there, but just go on.
Okay. So what we need is to continue interacting, continue networking, like Madam always actually said. I like the contribution where we are saying, okay, can you actually have the contact details so that we can actually continue communicating and dialoguing at different levels. It can be bilateral, it can be through groups or through emails and whatever. So I think for those who will be interested in even getting updates, they can actually send you Farai their emails. And if there was some specific questions pertaining to the Africa Continental Free Trade area, they let them send to you, and we can see how best we can assist. But never surrender, because it is here. The government is actually ratified the agreement, and trade is going to start soon. So we don't have a choice, but we have to find the areas where we can actually participate and make a contribution for our individual successes and the nation at large. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And thanks to everyone else. We'll join each other in the next session. I think we'll continue having these webinars where we bring topical people to just help us, to enlighten us on some of these developments. So I thank you all. This is the end of the meeting, and please get in touch. Let's discuss on the WhatsApp group. Thank you.